What's going on, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here, back with episode 17 of my grad school vlog. So if this is your first episode with us, welcome. And today I'm going to be talking about the second project of my second class. So the class I'm taking is Video Game AI, and this assignment that I did recently this week was all about path networks. So if you missed last episode, in general, this class is focusing more on computational geometry towards the beginning of the semester rather than decision-making models. I think we'll get more to that later. And so the first assignment we did was all about changing a continuous arena, space that our agents can operate within into a discrete kind of grid, X, Y coordinates, a discrete set of positions that our agent can occupy and move into, right? Path network is a pretty straightforward, similar idea, where instead of separating it into squares, we're separating it into a bunch of points that either we can set manually or we can set as some kind of function of the arena geometry. So these are individual points or nodes on a graph that are then connected by edges, and that's how the agent gets around, right? So it goes to the nearest node and then moves from that node to another, right? So A to B along the edges of that graph. So it's just a different way of describing kind of discrete space versus a grid set, right? And the point of all of these in general is mainly to save compute, because obviously our player is going to be able to move around in the space freely for the most part, unless we're playing checkers or something. They're going to be able to move around that space freely, but for our AI agents, especially if we have a lot of them, it saves us a bunch of compute if we dictate where it can and cannot stand, right? And so that's what this project is about. I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a very short episode because the assignment was very easy. I mean, it built off of very, very similar test cases to what we did for the grid cells, right? And yeah, the code was pretty significantly different, but it actually was a lot easier because we were actually given the nodes, right? So the discrete points in that space. All we had to do was dictate whether we want two nodes A and B to have an edge between them, right? And so just as an example, if there's an obstacle between A and B, we don't want there to be an edge on the graph because then an agent would phase through a wall or an obstacle or something. We don't want that. Similarly, if there's any nodes that should be disqualified from the graph for some reason, we don't want them to be connected to other ones in any way, right? So if for whatever reason a node is initialized as being outside the game arena, then we don't want it to be considered in the path traversal. Sometimes that happens, especially if obstacles move at one time step. One node might be valid, but then at the next time step it's not anymore. And so I understand the concepts of why they wanted us to draw these edges, but it was a really, really easy project because we didn't actually have to define the nodes. And I was a little surprised by that because a not insignificant portion of the lectures was about defining those nodes. But I really do think it's a function of time, right? All of these assignments are, at the current moment, a week each. And, maybe that's because we're in a summer course, maybe not, I don't really know. In any event, that might have been a much more substantial assignment to ask us to do, right? I don't really know. The functions that we were, the functions that we would input the geometry of the space into and get out the nodes, it didn't seem that difficult, but I'd imagine it's also difficult for them to grade and stuff like that because it's kind of subjective, right? You can define path network however you really want. So we didn't have to deal with that. We just had to draw edges, and it was kind of just checking, lots of line intersections, whether a point falls within a certain area, or outside a certain area if we're talking about the bounds of the arena. So a lot of stuff, I literally reused some code from the previous assignment in there directly, and yeah, overall it was a pretty straightforward assignment. I don't think it was a bad assignment, but it was pretty straightforward. Case closed, I guess. So that's the main assignment I worked on, and I guess I'll say I did get 100 on it. This was actually a lot easier to kind of check over than the other one because basically he showed us what the graph should look like, and so I could visually suss out if nodes that have edges between one another in the answer have edges between one another in mine, and similarly the inverse, right? If there's two nodes that shouldn't be connected based on the answer key that he gave us, and I see a connection between them, that means something's wrong on my end, right? So this is way easier to debug. I got a perfect 100. I wasn't honestly expecting a perfect 100, but I'm not going to complain, right? So that's the path network assignment. aside from that, I had to watch all the pathfinding lectures, like breadth first search, value iteration, DFS, Dijkstra's, and then ultimately like A-star. This is stuff I've talked about before, like literally in this vlog, because it was in the robotics class that I took previous semester. I'm also just really sick of A-star and pathfinding at this point. Like, I've done a personal project on it, I've used it for work, and I've taken it in two classes now. So at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. I'm gonna have to implement A-star for this assignment. Hopefully it's not too difficult. Maybe I can redeem myself from the search project I had to do last semester, because that didn't go too well. But yeah, that's basically it. It's kind of a chill week, which is good because I'm starting my new job pretty soon. So yeah, this is gonna be a super short vlog episode, I guess. I don't really have anything new to share, but I figured I should post to keep the cadence going. Make sure you guys are posted even on the slow weeks. I guess just to kind of fill the space here, I have been enjoying the class. Like, I think it's good. I'm pretty optimistic about it. I think I underestimated how much work it is, right? Because on OMS Hub, it was marked as like an easier course, but now that I'm taking a summer class and everything's more compressed in the summer, it is definitely like not that much easier than a robotics class, if at all, really. Which is fine. At the end of the day, like, I am enjoying this stuff. I think it's definitely a lot more interesting than I thought, and we haven't even gotten to the decision-making portion, right? This is mostly just computational geometry, but I do definitely find this useful for a lot of the simulation work that might be compute intensive that I've done at previous jobs and will continue to do throughout my career, right? So I definitely think it's relevant, despite the title of the class being video game AI. I'm not a video game developer. I do think it's pretty valuable so far, and I'm enjoying it. So yeah, this is pretty much just a chill vlog episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I highly recommend you follow along with me as I go on my grad school journey. I'm going to school at night while I continue to work full time. And yeah, I can assure you that there are lots of episodes that are more eventful than this one. Some for the better, others for the worse. But we're here for the ride, right? So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.